Hello, I'm Michael Berkman, Director of the McCourtney Institute for Democracy.
And I'm Chris Beam, Managing Director of the McCourtney Institute. And we're doing another one of our short videos to talk about the 2016 campaign. These are in real time, so we are just talking about what we know right now, but we wanted to talk a little bit about the transition team and how things are going and what we can learn and think about with respect to what we know so far. So, Michael, why don't we just start with the two first appointments, or the first announcements, the Reince Priebus and the Steve Bannon appointments?
Yeah, so those were so interesting. There's been a lot of attention focused on things that Bannon has said, and also appropriately attention focused on Breitbart.
Breitbart, right? Which he was executive director.
Which he was executive CEO, I believe, and which traffics in conspiracy theories and anti-Semitism and racism, strongly anti-immigrant. What I find particularly interesting about the way he's setting up his White House is the way he's building in this tension between the establishment and the anti-establishment wings.
Although, Reince Priebus clearly knows all the players on the Republican side, but he has no experience on the Hill. Is that right?
That is correct. He has no real policy experience, but he does have experience managing a large organization.
Right, that's true.
And one of the chief roles of the White House Chief of Staff is managing the White House staff. He is also the main gatekeeper to who gets into to see the president. But true, he doesn't come in with the sort of policy expertise that maybe a Rahm Emanuel did.
I just want to go back, because your argument is that these two represent kind of diametric wings or diametric impulses within the Trump presidency.
Absolutely.
And that you think is going to be difficult to maintain or sustain.
I think it will be difficult to maintain, but I also think it speaks to the fact that in some ways, Donald Trump is really going to be trying to promote this anti-establishment kind of fervor that he used during the campaign. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I actually see it coupled a little bit with all the attacks that are going on with the media, the constant attacks on the New York Times, which are pretty unusual for a president-elect to be tweeting out about the New York Times on a regular basis. And I suspect that one of the roles that Bannon is going to play is to be putting out there a sort of alternate story.
Do you feel like what might be behind, at least this is one thing that occurred to me, was that Bannon on the one hand, Priebus on the other, you saw Trump tweet about the protests saying that they were rigged and that they were unfair, and then hours later he tweeted, this is democracy in action and good for them. And so I almost got this sense of good Trump, bad Trump.
Yes, right.
And so I kind of feel the same way with these two announcements of positions.
Yes, I think that's true.
You think it is?
Yeah.
And this is going to be something that goes forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't really know how it's going to work its way out in policy. I mean, you definitely see developing that he's going to be pushing an economic and domestic agenda closely aligned with Paul Ryan. And somebody like Priebus makes perfect sense to work with him and to get that through.
Friends,
And in a way, we're returning, maybe returning to an age of congressional government in terms of who's driving the agenda on domestic and economic politics.
Of course, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that, because Trump really has no ideological or even partisan core, that he may just end up going in variety of directions and making variety of coalitions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But, I noticed that they're coming into this transition with very little in the way of a policy agenda, especially one worked out. And the stories that circulated during the campaign about his policy operation in Washington, D.C., where they weren't paid and eventually was disbanded, the reason those policy shops are important, not so much so that he has something to talk about during the campaign, but so that when they can hit the ground running, with real plans, and then hire personnel who can put those plans into place. And I don't think they really have that.
Right.
And instead, there's a vacuum. And Congress, they're all set up. They have all kinds of policy proposals ready to go. And that's why I think they're really going to be dominating a lot of what goes on in that area.
We just have a little time left. Do you want to say anything about the National Security Advisor, that, as far as we know, has been made and accepted?
Well, so two positions have been talked about in the news today that I think are both important. So one is General Flynn as National Security Advisor, who has a reputation as...
Which, by the way, does not have to be approved by Congress. I don't think that's
Right, well, he
irrelevant.
never could be approved by Congress.
That's
So it's
my
really
point.
the only
That's my
position they
point,
could
yeah.
give him. But you know, he is not well liked and not well respected by many in the national, in the foreign policy community,
And in the military.
And in the military. And what one thing you pick up in the news reports anyway is a reluctance of many in the foreign policy establishment community anyway, establishment foreign policy community on the Republican side to come forward and work for Donald Trump. That's why those tweets from Elliot Cohen.
Well, I was
It's
just
sort of
thinking
an
about that.
established,
We did do that in an earlier show.
what were so important. The other position they're talking about today is Senator Sessions for Attorney General, which suggests to me that we will see a very hard line on immigration and civil rights.
The only thing I would say is that the other thing that this manifests is just how important to Donald Trump loyalty is.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we didn't even get to talking about the family and conflicts of
That's true.
interest.
We didn't. For another episode.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with more shortly.